Autobiography of Edward Phillips, 1813–1896. This sketch was written by Sylvia Phillips, then a 14-year-old granddaughter of Edward Phillips, as he dictated it to her in the year 1889. Italicized portions are apparently Phillips' corrections/additions. Typescript in hands of family. Edward Phillips, son of William and Mary Phillips, born in Oxenhall Parish, Gloucestershire, England, April 2, 1813. He was christened April 3, 1813. When I was 6 months old, my father moved to Lee, Worcestershire, Upper Sandlin, and there rented a farm of 100 acres for 3 years. From there moved to Black House, Credley, Herefordshire, and rented a farm of 75 acres for 4 years, then returning to Upper Sandlin and rented that farm again for 3 years. From there he moved to Credley and rented another farm. While working there he was taken sick and died at Longley Green, Suckley, Worcestershire, November 29, 1825, at the age of 62. He married Mary Ann Presty in Worcestershire, being about 10 years her senior. She was the mother of 11 children. From that time I employed myself farming and learning blacksmithing. I joined the society called the United Brethren, whose president and leader was Thomas Kington. Everything worked well with us until within a year of the time Brother Wilford Woodruff arrived in our neighborhood. It seemed to me that we had come to a precipice and could not go any farther until Brother Wilford Woodruff placed a bridge over that precipice, and we went on with glad hearts rejoicing. I went to hear him preach at Ridgeway Crossing on or about March 15, 1840. A day or two following I went to Hill's farm to hear him speak. When I started my good old mother said, "Edward, I should think you will not come back without being baptized." I obeyed this counsel. I was the only male member of my father's family who received the gospel. My sister Susan followed suit. I was one of the 46 preachers that Brother Woodruff speaks of in his Leaves of my journal. The 46 were baptized except one, that was Philip Holt. Brother Woodruff baptized me at Hill Farm, where he baptized 600. He told me not long ago that less had apostatized out of that lot than any other of the same number in the church. A few days after I was baptized, I was ordained a priest and put in charge of 2 branches, Ashfield and Crowcut, with George Brooks as my assistant. This was near Sherridge, Lee, Worcestershire. In the fall of that year, I was ordained an elder at the conference, under the hands of Brother Woodruff, and was sent to preach the gospel with Elder John Gailey to the Forest of Dean and Gloucestershire. There I had the privilege of visiting my father's family. We traveled and preached nearly a year, and many were brought into the church under our administration. My mother embraced the gospel about this time under the hands of Brother Woodruff at a place called Moorings Cross, Maythen Parish, Herefordshire, 1841. I left my home to emigrate to America. I went to Gloucester and in company with 100 saints went to Bristol and boarded the Carolina for America. We set sail for Quebec August 8, 1841. We had a tedious voyage of 8 weeks and 3 days, but landed safely. Thomas Richardson was our president. We set sail for Quebec. From Quebec we went to Montreal by steamer, and from Montreal through the lock to Kingston, and then we sailed along Lake Ontario to Lewiston. We had a fine view of the city of Toronto. From Lewiston we boarded the train, which was drawn by mules, from Niagara Falls. The next day we boarded the train for Buffalo and arrived at that place after dark. We put up at the Farmers' Exchange for a week because of sickness. We then boarded the Chesapeake, for where now stands the great city of Chicago. We hired a man there to take us to Nauvoo with a team, which contract he filled. We arrived at Nauvoo in the latter part of October, 1841, on Saturday. On Sunday, I was anxious to see the prophet. I attended meeting there and saw him for the first time. I did not need an introduction, for I knew him the moment I saw him. He preached the gospel of salvation to us that morning, which caused my heart to rejoice. Next day, Monday, I went to work in quarrying rock for the temple. That was my first day's work in America, near the Upper Stone House on the Mississippi River. I continued to work on the temple and the Nauvoo house most of the winter. I boarded with an old friend by the name of Jenkins, a shoemaker. There I fell in love with my present wife, who had preceded me a few weeks to America. On the 2nd of August of the next year, being 1 year from the time I left home, we were married by Heber C. Kimball near Camp Creek in Hancock County. She bore me 15 children, 9 of whom are still living, 3 of whom were born in Illinois, and the 2 first, a boy and a girl, died there. We were driven from their graves at the point of a bayonet, which was very grievous to us. I had some land and made me a nice home near where they were buried. I was working in the field near the house when the news came that the prophet and his brother were killed at Carthage jail. This made me shed bitter tears, for I felt they were 2 good friends and I knew Joseph was a true prophet of God. He had said that he would go and die for the people. I was under arms in Nauvoo when he gave himself up to die for the people. He discharged us and told us to go home and he would go and die for us. We would gladly have gone and stood between him and death, but he would not let us. I was ready and willing to go. We were quartered at the tithing yard and slept in the Nauvoo Exposition building. We went one day for foliage for our horses, and met General Joseph Smith with his staff in the street. He cheered us and said, "Well done, boys." We had been out inspecting the ground where we expected to meet our enemies. Word came to our captain one night that the picket guard was driven in and we were ordered out in the dead of night to go and meet the mob. I was determined to go and assist, so I borrowed a horse from a boy who did not like to go himself. Nevertheless, this proved to be a false alarm and I went back disappointed. The prophet said he would go and die for us. He did and was butchered in cold blood. I was not there when he was killed, but I went later and took my wife with me to show her the well, curb, and the window where he jumped out when he was shot. I have a patriarchal blessing hanging in a frame in my room, which was pronounced upon my head by the prophet and patriarch, Hiram Smith, in the fall of 1843, which is worth more than gold to me. Gold is no name for it. The predictions are being literally fulfilled every day. I know if I prove faithful it will all come to pass. I knew then and also know now that Joseph was a true prophet of God, and that the mantle of Joseph fell on Brigham Young, who was his legal successor. I was present at the meeting when this took place and heard with my own ears and saw with my own eyes. We all thought Joseph had come back to us, although we knew he was in his grave. I was standing by the temple talking to Brother Woodruff and he pointed out a spot to me on the opposite side of the river about 1.5 miles above Montrose, and said there would be a city and a temple built there and the place would be called Zarahemla. I was at Nauvoo when the temple was finished and dedicated. I went up into the tower and wrote my name there. As I understand, the wicked have burned that temple to the ground and it is all destroyed like the Jerusalem temple. But I expect to see that temple re-erected and the one built on the opposite side of the river to match. Before leaving Nauvoo in 1846, for that was the time that we were driven far away, I went to McDonald's near McEwen's mill to try to sell my little farm. There I found a few of Joseph and Hiram's murderers drinking together. One of them was old Tom Dixon of Locust Grove, and an old professed friend of mine. If it had not been for him, I expect they would have butchered me also, for they placed a pistol in the hands of a little boy about 8 years of age, and told him to say, "Damn you, sir, I could kill you." The little fellow swung his revolver and acted bravely over the affair. In May 1846, we started on our journey west. Left Camp Creek, passed through Pontique and crossed the Mississippi at Fort Madison. Traveling through Iowa and the season being very wet, it was very laborious to get through. We had to travel the ground 3 or 4 times over to help each other. We did not arrive at Council Bluffs until the battalion had left for Fort Leavenworth under command of Colonel Allen. Council Point was our winter quarters. We remained there until 1849. Leaving there in the spring of '49 with Captain Gully's company. William Hyde was captain of our 50. We traveled until we arrived at Grand Island. Captain Gully was taken sick and died there. Daniel Collett and myself washed him and dressed him and laid him away. We then appointed Orson Spencer as captain of our 100 for the remainder of the journey. The cholera was very troublesome, on the road, it being the year of the California gold craze. A great many of the emigrants died of cholera. It also got among the Indians and made them very angry with the whites for crossing their country. A great many of them were camped at Scotch Bluffs and were threatened to war with the emigrants. When we arrived at Scotch Bluffs, soldiers were called for at Fort Laramie to come and meet us, which they did and guarded us through in safety. We traveled the balance of the way in safety to Salt Lake Valley in October of 1849. I turned in and built a log house on a 10-acre lot south of Salt Lake to dwell in for that winter. I got logs out of Red Butte Canyon. I bought a 5-acre lot of Gardner Potter's, trading him one of my old favorite steers for it. In the winter of 1849 to 50, John H. Green and myself started north, to hunt a farm. We traveled to the north extremity of the county, what is now Davis County, to the Sandridge until we encountered snow so deep and frozen so hard that we could not travel farther. We concluded to return, rather than perish, to find shelter. We had intended going as far as Ogden, finding us a farm, but the snow prevented us from doing so. We went back and stayed overnight with S.O. Holmes. We concluded the creek was the best place we had seen and returned in the spring of 1850. On or about April 10, 1850, I started with my family for what is now Kaysville Creek, but which many at present call Kays Creek, but I arrived one day previous to Bishop K. We settled there on Sandy Creek in Frosselossie Survey, which we called Phillips Creek. In a day or two after our arrival on what is now Kays Creek, we took our plows and started about the same time. We had 5 bushels of club head wheat each, which we sowed broadcast. I sowed mine on 6 acres. Brother K sowed his on 5. We plowed land for farming side by side, being about equal in quality. I raised 250 bushels from my 6. He raised 210 from his 5. President Young paid us a visit after we had harvested our crop, and he wanted to know how much I had raised. I told him 250 bushel. He was asked why my crop was the best on the creek that season, and I said it was due to the prayers I offered at the time of planting. He told of this in a sermon on the stand in the Salt Lake City Tabernacle, to try and show the increase. This was done without offense, but we had to stand guard night and day to watch as well as pray, for there were from 1 to 200 cattle turned out every night about a mile above us, belonging to emigrants who were on their way to the California gold diggings. The country north of us for almost 20 miles was covered with a luxuriant growth of grass. We called it bunch grass. In the fall of the year, it would wave in the breeze like a grain field. It was rich for wintering stock. That is now a dry farming country, raising from 15 to 25 bushels of wheat per acre. I have lived to see within the last 10 years from 15 to 20 headers all running in sight at the same time, cutting and putting in the stack from 25 to 30 acres each day. I owned on one of them. Probably a dog threshing machine following up, separating the wheat from the straw and chaff. President Young and his council and company arrived at our settlement in the fall of 1850 and organized a ward, appointing William K. as bishop, myself and John H. Green as his counselors. On a subsequent meeting by President Young predicted that the waters would increase sufficiently to supply 3 wards instead of 1, which has been fulfilled. At that time we had hardly enough water for 1 ward. Now it is divided into 2 wards, and we are expecting it to be subdivided into the 3rd. At the time of my first settling here, we could not raise a peach tree, but the elements are so softened that now we can raise any kind of fruit. In 1850 I carried a chain for Surveyor Lemon form, from the first creek south to our settlement, the first survey in this ward. After this, Jesse Fox was our surveyor. When I came to Kaysville, I brought with me an aged mother and a short sketch of her life. The summer of 1850, I built a log house, being the year the ward was organized. The following summer, I built another, and in 1853, I built the first adobe house in Kaysville ward, consisting of 3 rooms. On March 15, 1854, I, Edward Phillips, was married to my second wife Martha Anley Taylor by President Brigham Young, in the Endowment House. To this union 3 children were born. She died July 16, 1864. In 1855, President Young counseled us to build a meeting house about 2 miles east of where we had settled. We selected a spot at which place there was a military post, the commander being Captain Joseph Taylor. We united with him for protection against Indians and walled in a fort about covering 60 acres. some of the walls of which are still standing today. In this fort we had the foundation of the meeting house. The dimensions being 90 by 45 feet, which is in a good state of preservation today. It was commenced in the winter of 1855 and 1856 and completed in 1862. About this time we were advised by the president of the church to enlarge our fort sufficiently to make a city of it. After doing this, we built a wall around the whole of it consisting of 120 acres or a quarter of a section. Our location was a beautiful one, being between the Wasatch Mountains and Great Salt Lake. About 6 miles of rolling country between and from 10 to 15 miles from north to south. In 1856, Bishop K was called on a mission to Carson Valley and Allen Taylor was appointed to take his place as bishop. After the return of the Carson mission, Christopher Layton was appointed to take his place as bishop. In his turn as bishop, he was appointed as one of the legislature of Utah, and while in the position, he procured a charter of the city of Kaysville, which has been in running order ever since under different mayors. That is Kaysville as it was. Now Kaysville as it is. Our bishop is Peter Barton, John R. Barnes and Thomas F. Rush as his counselors, who are giving satisfaction. Hiram Stewart as mayor and the city council govern the city. Our ward was divided into 2 wards. We have 2 roller mills, a creamery, 2 post offices, 6 free district schools in full operation, a very nice academy consisting of $8,000, a city hall costing about $6,000, 1 millinery, 1 very nice grocery store, 2 railroad depots, 4 blacksmith shops, 6 general merchandise stores, a ZCMI, and many fine residences. My farm where I first settled consists of 100 acres divided into 12 fields with the intention of carrying the sheep industry. I have 3 artesian wells. One averaging 3 gallons a minute, 1/7, and the largest 70 to 75 gallons per minute. This one supplies a fish pond which is well supplied with carp. I have lived to be nearly 80 years, to see the 3rd generation. I have had 18 children of whom 13 lived to marry, 99 grandchildren and some great-grandchildren.